Welcome back, YouTube. My name is Seabass and this is Throttle Hobby. Finally, we have the parts. We have all the correct ones, and I decided to go all out and get every single other part that we would need to replace to finally get this all straightened out. So before we get started, we're pretty much going to need these tools in front of us. We have a 19 open end wrench, a 22 open end wrench, a closed ratcheting 16, a closed ratcheting 18, a hammer, another hammer for, I guess this one gets lonely, pry bar, pickle fork, screwdriver, a ratchet with an 8mm, and some white lithium. This is pretty much this basic stuff that I had to use to get this side done, because I actually already got the passenger side done. It really was straightforward. It's really not that complicated. And I mean, the only thing I'll show you guys later on is there's one cover on the passenger side you have to get rid of, which the driver's side doesn't. And also you're gonna have to get rid of the back transmission cover, which on mine was two 8mm bolts and a bunch of these I guess low tapped in screws, and there's 3 of them there, which is what we use the screwdriver for and what we use the ratchet with the 8mm on. So let me raise it up and show you guys exactly what I did on one side and how we're going to tackle the other side. So as you can see, before I show you guys the other side that I did, the reason I'm actually doing this is because this ball joint here, when I got the car and I tested it, you could see that it's actually slightly moving. And although it's not the worst that I've seen here, with the stuff we're about to do with this car, you definitely don't want this to be moving at high speeds. We had one guy here that actually showed up in an old Oldsmobile. Long story short, that popped out and that was a whole heck of a mess right in front of the door. So this is the reason we're actually replacing all these things. I just like to do both sides. So before we get into that, let's take the wheel off. It'll be a 17. And remember, these are inverted studs, so leave at least one on there and then try to tap the wheel off. A bit of faith, trust, big hammer. So this is how it actually looks when it's all done. We have the new ball joint end right here with the new nut. We have the new ball joint that's attached to the frame, which I actually got because I got everything. 2 bolts, and then this one nut that actually connects everything together. And then we have this entire thing that I also bought, which is 2 bolts in there, which this is actually the cover I told you guys need to take off. So it'll be an 8mm here and an 8mm up there, and then I just wiggled this cover out. You undo those 2, and then you pop this in on the bench using a jack. I'll show you guys, but this is how it pretty much looks all done. So to get started on the other side, we're going to use our open end 19. We're going to loosen this bolt. Now I will tell you guys, once we're done loosening this bolt, we actually won't be able to take this entire thing off. What we're going to do is get this bolt as close as we can to the CV joint, because it's going to get stuck. And later on, when we loosen it up, we'll actually be able to take this whole thing out. And that's as far as we'll get it, because it bottoms out on the CV joint. Next, I'm going to grab the pickle fork and a hammer. I'm going to stick the pickle fork in here, and I'm going to tap the back end of it with the hammer and have this pop out so we can get rid of the nut. There we go. And just like that, we can finally remove the top nut. So that's this part loose. Next, we're going to get this bolt out, which will be an open end 22 off of the ball joint that's attached to the frame of the car. Okay, there we go. And we will also use the pickle fork and the hammer on the other side to remove this ball joint from the actual arm. Being careful not to hit the CV. And there we go. And finally, for the last part, we're going to use our ratcheting 16-inch millimeter to take out these two bolts that are holding on the rubber grommet here for the rest of the arm. And the arm should just come out. These are the 2 of the 4 bolts we will be saving. Now we're going to take the arm off. And that's it. That's all there is to it. And now, because I said we're going to take off the ball joint that's attached to the frame using our ratcheting closed 18 millimeter, because we have a new one. These are the other 2 bolts that we will be saving and reusing, because they don't actually come with new ones. And also, this is why we have our crowbar, because these things, and I'll show you in a minute, have a neat little trick that Beamer did to these parts, and that is, in each one of these holes, you have a ring like this on the side. And what this ring does is it seeds in one of those holes. That's why I had to pop out the one over here with the hammer. So we'll be seating these back in to there. So now that we pretty much got everything out, we're gonna go in reverse. So the ball joint that's attached to the frame, that's got that little seated thing, and the 2 bolts I said to hold on to, we're gonna reattach to here. And we'll just make sure this moves. Very tight, it's good. Quality part. So now what we gotta do is we line up the A-arms exactly as they are, because now we need to get this grommet piece onto the end of here. And we wanna make sure that we line this up exactly the same way when we put it on, because like I said, on the outside, on the back side of these are those little grooves that they sit in. So you want that to sit flush with the groove that's on the vehicle. So it's going to be like this. So let's take this over to the bench. So what we're going to do now is put this in the vise, standing up as gently as possible and as sturdy as possible. And now we know which way this is going to go. What we have to do is put this on here like that. So what we're going to do is spray some white lithium in there. Like that. Wait, see this. We have technology. All right, so now that we got all the pieces that we need, we're gonna put this on. What I'm gonna do first is just get this middle piece caught on first. So we're gonna get this here, and we're just gonna put this on hand tight, just for it to stay up here. Something along the lines of that. Cool. Now that we have these other 2 bolts that I told you to save, what we're gonna do is try to get this rubber bushing grommet attached to the bottom part of this. And as you can see over here, remember I said these 2 have to seat in here? Well, that's kind of where they're gonna have to sit. So So we're gonna line these up as best we can. Not quite like that. And get these hands started. So now we're gonna grab our closed ratcheting wrench 16, crank these puppies down. And they've seated perfectly. Next, we'll just get the ball joint in and pre-start the nut because it'll just bottom out on the CV axle. And we'll just start the nut before we go all the way up. There we go, just let that sit there. Now we're gonna tighten this bolt up that we started with our open end 22. And for those of you who this spins, there is a little T-handle here you could use. But I was lucky on the last one, and hopefully I'll be lucky on this one. Nice. And last but not least, the ball joint with our opened end 19. So sometimes ball joints likes to spin even when you're trying to put the nut on. So what I did is I grabbed another T-jack and I put pressure on it up. So now I could actually spin it without it spinning along with everything else. All right, that's it. Let's put the wheels back on, see if that's finally tight. Now that we got everything back together, let's see if this is the moment of truth. Will it move? And that's a big fat no. Perfect. We set out what we wanted to do. Well, that's pretty much how you do A-arm, ball joint on car, bushing A-arm fits into. So, cool. Now we have big plans for this car and we could go forward because we know that our wheel's not gonna pop out under us. So, thank you. This has been an episode of Throttle Hobby. My name is Seabass and I will see you guys in the next episode.